Well, folks, it's winter, as you can tell. We're supposed to get about 15 to 20 centimeters of snow today, and I was out here maybe a couple hours ago just to take this car out, and there was no snow, and now we've got a good few centimeters minimum. So we're going to be putting this car through its paces. Our spotlight is on this 2019 Subaru Forester Sport. It has the Eyesight Package as well, one of about half a dozen trims available for this model, which is all new for 2019. This is the 5th generation, and it is a compact crossover SUV. It started life off as a crossover wagon, and it's evolved slowly. But I have to say, it really does represent what a crossover actually is. It drives, feels, and handles a lot more like a car than any of the other crossovers we've done so far this year. It has a 182 horsepower, 176 pound-foot of torque, 2.5 liter dual overhead cam, horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine. And it's also got a CVT. So we're going to be showing you everything about this car, doing some actual winter testing with it, and going over everything you need to know if you're in the market for a sub $40,000 compact crossover SUV. Now, given how much snow we're already getting right now, I'm going to leave the engine running, something we usually only do when we're doing electrics or PHEVs, but the reason I'm going to keep it on is so that it can kind of warm up a little bit, so when we jump inside I'm not freezing cold. But there's a lot I want to go over with this vehicle. As I mentioned, it's new for 2019, marks the start of the 5th generation Forester. So there's a lot to go over, and I think a lot of people are interested in more of the technical elements of this car, so we're going to be spending a little bit more time going over some of that. So first off, the Forester has LED front headlights as standard. No matter what trim you get, the headlights will be LED, which is really good. With this Sport model, which is sort of in line with the Limited model, you get less luxury features, but more sport-oriented ones. They're kind of the same. I'd say they sit side by side, but this one is pretty much near the top, a little bit above the midway point in their vehicle lineup for the Forester. So you get things like LED fog lights. They're vertically positioned. It's a very unique look for this car. You also have LED turn signals, and you also have side repeaters built into the mirrors. You have adaptive front headlights as well, so they will turn as you're moving. And you also have an active grille shutter, which will open or close depending on the weather. Throughout the entire Forester lineup, you also have active torque vectoring, and with this one, you also have a windshield wiper defroster, de-icer, so that's good for weather like this. We've seen that on some other models, but not all of them, so it's a good feature to have, especially if you live up here in Quebec, if you're in the northwestern part of the United States, Vermont, upstate New York. A car like this is definitely going to do you good, especially on a day like today. Now, this has the Eyesight Package. You can't get the Sport model without it, so it comes with it. And you get things like pre-collision braking, adaptive cruise control, lane keep and lane departure warning, reverse auto braking, the proximity key to get into the car, and high beam assist. Just a few other features we'll talk about that come with the Sport model as we go around and talk about the car. Now, as I mentioned, this has a 2.5 liter boxer engine. Produces about the average amount of power for any of the other cars we've seen in this segment. It's the only option that they have for this vehicle though, so if you want a little bit more power, you're kind of out of luck. Even though this is the Sport model, don't get it confused with like an STI version. It's the same transmission, same engine that you get across the board, so it's not any different in terms of that, but you do have some extra little mechanical differences that we'll talk about on the side. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about some of the mechanical elements of the 2019 Forester, because I think it's important for people who are buying this car to know about how it's put together. It does have full-time symmetrical all-wheel drive, which is Subaru's all-wheel drive system. We've used it before with the Impreza that we did last year, and we are going to be using it a lot today, obviously, with the snow. It also has a dual X mode system, which gives you better control in deep snow conditions like this. We'll talk about that more on our road test and a little bit more on the inside, where it's a little bit warmer, but we'll talk about that system. But again, some of the mechanics of this car differ a little bit, especially with the Sport model. You have different style brakes for this model, 316 millimeter ventilated disc brakes up front with dual pistons, and then the rear brakes are 285 millimeter ventilated disc brakes with a single piston caliper. But it does change things up a little bit, gives you a little bit better braking control when you're driving. Now, the suspension system is also a little different than you might see on some other vehicles. It has a McPherson strut system in the front and then a double wishbone rear end. So you have better ride handling when you're going over bumps, potholes, and things like that. And I think you'll have pretty good control going over snow mounds like we're going to be doing this week. Now, because this is a Subaru, it is safe, and we talked about it when we did the Impreza last year. The rear doors have anchor points at the bottom, so if you get into a side collision, those doors will be reinforced through that anchor point to keep the occupants in the rear seats safe. We've seen that on very few cars. My BMW 7 Series has a system like that for all the doors, but we do see that with Subaru vehicles. And it also comes with Subaru's rear and side vehicle detection, which again will help to brace the car in an event of a collision coming from not just the front, but the sides and the back. But speaking of the back, let's jump to there and talk about the few features there before jumping inside. Now, this car has a sport badge on the right to help distinguish it, obviously, but then you've got these orange accents that run pretty much around the car. You got them on the back, the side, the front, and then even on the bars for the roof rack. I think it looks kind of cool, especially with this dark blue metallic paint. It really gives it a good contrast. And if you get it in white with the orange accents, I think it looks pretty cool. It distinguishes it just enough from the regular models to let you know that you are driving something a little bit sportier, I guess. It doesn't necessarily make it sportier, but I think it's cool. So you've got the orange parts there. You also have stainless steel exhaust tips, which I guess are nice to have. You also get black accents around the grille, the fog lights, the spoiler, and the rear glass section here. So you get a little extra differences. If we had the other model to be able to show you the difference between the two, you'd be able to see it a little bit more. But I really do like it. I mean, I'm a big fan of anything that isn't a black car, unless it's like a limousine style BMW 7 Series Mercedes S-Class. So this dark blue, I think is a good look. It's dark, blends in with the black trim. I like it, I really do like it. And especially with all the snow that we're getting, it stands out. You're not gonna lose it in a parking lot. Now, there's some changes on the inside too with the Sport model, but we'll talk about that when we jump on the inside. You do have a rear power lift gate, something that you'd expect on this trim. Well, not necessarily this trim, but definitely on a vehicle of this price point, you'd want to have it. It works well. You do have LED lighting in the back there. You do have a tonneau cover that's built in. It's a little different than what we've seen. There's essentially 2 points for it to connect to. You have a cross member in the section where it actually supports itself. You have the piece that you can actually move out of the way, and then there's a smaller section which essentially just locks into place with rubber grommets to be able to stay in there. There's also a cargo tray cover. It's a nice rubber plastic material. So again, on a day like today, if you were going out doing some activities, you maybe do some skiing, your boots are messy, you want to put them in the trunk, you don't have to worry about ruining the carpet or the interior because of this little cover. So I do like that. I think it's a pretty good size back there. You can fold the seats flat for extra storage, which is pretty much what we see on any other vehicle. The only real change that I noticed with this, you do have a button to close the trunk like you would on any other car, but you can also lock it from the back. Usually we only see that on BMW models and luxury class vehicles, so it is nice to be able to lock it there. If you're driving the car, you park somewhere, you go into the trunk and you want to lock it, do it all from one button. But let's jump inside now because I'm covered in snow, I'm a little cold, and let's go over the interior of this compact crossover SUV. You know, a day like today is not ideal in terms of filming. I mean, it's great that we're able to show you this car in its natural environment, because I know last year when we had the Impreza, our Subaru guy said, I really hope it snows for you so you can test out the all-wheel drive. Well, here we go. A year later almost, we got the snow, but it's not great for the filming of it, the actual technical portion of this video, just because it's cold, I'm cold, the equipment doesn't work as well, and everything's wet. All my notes are all soaking wet, but we're inside now. I want to talk a little bit about the interior here. If you did watch our video on the Impreza, it is very similar. I mean, this really is still based on Subaru's global platform. The Impreza is also based on it as well. You do have this premium cloth material for the seating. It's got different textures, some sort of vinyl on the sides with the cloth on the inside, and it runs along the doors as well. Not the full length of the door card, but I kind of like it. It feels like good quality material. You don't always need to have leather, especially on a day like today. The seats will actually probably get warmer quicker when you turn on the heated seat option because they aren't leather. But again, if you got the limited trim or the trim above it, you would get leather seating, but this is the Sport model, so it changes things a little bit as well. Like I said, you have these seats, you have the orange trim throughout, the stitching, faux stitching on the dashboard and on the seats, and then the surrounds for your vents, and here in the X mode controller, which we'll talk about in a second. You have an 8-inch infotainment screen. We pretty much saw it with the Impreza. It has a 6-speaker audio system. Jump up again to the Limited, you're going to get a 9-speaker Harman Kardon system, but it sounds pretty good for a non-premium system. You also have dual USB ports here and dual USB ports in the back for charging, 2.1 amp chargers there. So if you do have people in the back, you got kids with tablets or phones that need to be charged, you're good to go. A couple other things that come with the Sport model here. We have dual zone automatic climate control. It works pretty well, especially on a day like today. Rotary knobs look a little dated, but what can you do? Up top, we see the 6.3-inch information display. It'll show things like your music if you want to. You can scroll through with the info button so you can see your range, date, time, change some settings, as well as your active safety settings. So when the headlights are on or off, it'll tell you. Rear active braking system, lane keep assist and forward collision, all things like that you can see from the 6.3-inch screen up top. You also have an information display in the gauge cluster. Has similar information, but slightly different. You can control it again through the steering wheel controls, but very similar to what we saw in the Impreza. The gauge cluster also has orange and red accents on it because it is the Sport model. And you do have a leather shift knob and paddle shifters as well, which you pretty much get on all the trims except the base model. Plus this large power sunroof. It's not panoramic, and I've noticed that some manufacturers are saying that they have a panoramic sunroof when it isn't. I'm very glad Subaru is not advertising it as a pano sunroof. They just say it's a large sunroof, which it certainly is. Now, seating space is comfortable. I'm comfortable up here. Legroom isn't too bad at all. Rear seat space is also pretty comparable to what we see in this segment, but I do find that it rides a little lower. It feels more like a car, and especially the visibility on this is fantastic. So it's one of the reasons why I want to talk about it in this weather. It sucks, I know, but it's good to be able to test it in this weather to be able to tell you why it's so good year round. So let's go on our road test now, talk about the X mode here, talk about the symmetrical all-wheel drive, the 2.5-liter boxer engine, and everything else you need to know if you want to stay safe this winter with a new car. Now, I mentioned when we were outside that this car has a dual X mode system from Subaru. Normally when you start the car up, it's in normal mode. You just push the button and it'll be in normal mode, but there's two modes. Essentially, one has like a straight line with some little bumps on it, the other one's a little curved line with some bumps in it. If you turn it to the left, it goes into snow mode and mud mode. So for right now, I'd say that this would probably be kind of the mode we want to be in. If you turn it to the right, it's deep snow and muddier, dirtier conditions. And essentially it turns off the traction control when we're in the second mode, the right mode, the deep snow mode, and it also turns on hill descent mode. Now we're in the driveway as well. We don't normally start our driving segment here, but because the snow, I don't know, it's about 4 to 5 inches. I mean, it's a little deeper even an hour after filming the introduction stuff. I think it makes sense to keep it in this deep mode. I mean, I'm sure if I put it into normal, the car will have no issue whatsoever. But you can only use it at certain speeds as well. So it's more for low speed stuff. Maybe if you're parking on a side street, gets plowed in, you might want to use it. But we're going to pull out of the driveway now, which is not plowed. No problem whatsoever. As we exit the driveway here, the roads are a little bit more plowed, but wow, look at that. No issues whatsoever. No spin, no skidding, nothing. You can take these turns. That's pretty good. We did do a little bit of testing with the Subaru Impreza before. We just took it onto a dead-end road and tested it there, and it was fine. This vehicle also, give it a little bit too much gas there maybe, but all-wheel drive kept it in line. No issues whatsoever. That's the whole thing. Subaru Canada, thank you very much for putting winter tires on this car. All of their vehicles on the press fleet right now in Montreal have winter tires, so thank you. Because we talked about it last week when we did the Ram 1500. Having all-wheel drive doesn't make you invincible in the snow because, yeah, it'll help a little bit, but it's not going to help as much as having actual winter tires. And I have the confidence in motion. That's Subaru's slogan, and I certainly have it with this. Now, the system has disengaged that X mode. Can try to put it back, but it won't let me. We're going too fast. It seems to only engage between 0 and 20 kilometers. You can't turn it on anything above that, really, but I don't think you really need it, especially if you're on the road. Like right now, as I mentioned, the roads are not plowed at all. There's some tracks from other vehicles that have come down this road already, but it is certainly not clear whatsoever. And if we had to perform an emergency stop, ABS kicked in quite a bit. We skidded a little bit, but the brakes caught pretty well. We didn't slide at all. That's key, because the winter tires on here and the way that the brake force distribution works on this car kept me pretty much in line. And look, you can't see it as much probably on the camera. We're not putting the cameras outside because if I lose them, that's it, they're gone. So we're keeping the cameras inside the car cabin for any of the videos we're doing for the next little while, but there's nobody on the road, and is it whiteout condition? I mean, close. You know, the roads here are certainly not plowed. A lot of snow coming down, but I have no issue. Look at that, just takes the turn, no issue. I don't know how many cars I've driven, especially front wheel only drive cars, going around a corner with a lot of snow like that. Even with winter tires, you're going to slip a little bit. But this has been really good for the first little bit here. We've driven it already in the snow. Earlier today it was snowing. Yesterday we had some snow as well, and ice and rain and just crappy conditions all around. But I gotta say, it's got great grip. And here we go, another turn. No problems whatsoever. I mean, if I had a little tow hook on this car, I'm sure I could be driving around offering my services as a snowplow of sorts, or pulling people out of ditches and towing your car if you've gotten stuck somewhere, because this thing is doing really well. But it's not going to be a fun car the same way maybe something like an Impreza would be, because there is no manual parking brake, and it's an electronic parking brake. So if you're thinking about taking this kind of car out and doing some donuts and some drifting, you can't do it because the car is not designed to do that. There's no manual parking brake. You can't chuck it in. But you know, look, I can't really make it slide if I wanted it to, because the car just does such a good job going over the snow. Now the other problem too, you can't see it on the video as much, but trying to navigate through here, I don't know what's actual road and what's curb, and that's certainly the issue. So we've put it back into the deep snow X mode, even though it's not really that bad. But I'd like to find, oh, that's a curb. What I really want to do is find a section that's deep like that, but won't kill the bumpers. Because the problem is, they've plowed some of this, but they've plowed it onto the road. So I don't really know what's... Oh, here we go. Now again, you guys, I hope you can see it, but they've essentially plowed in this area here. Whoa, look at that. Not plowed at all. They built a little wall. Subaru Forester cuts right through it. Another bump there, no problem whatsoever. And here we are back on, actually the road here's a little plowed. It's got some dusting on it, but that's the whole point of buying a car like this. We talked about it when we did the Impreza. People complained a little bit, not so much, but they said, well, look, you're still driving a sedan. In the winter, ground clearance is king. And this has about the same ground clearance as something like our Mazda CX-5. I think it's a little bit shorter, just like 5-10 millimeters less ground clearance, or something even smaller, like 2 millimeters. Like, it's so marginal that it really doesn't make a difference. But because it is a crossover, because you do have added clearance over a sedan, I mean, you really have no issues. And even with something like an Impreza, you're going to be fine. Subaru's been doing all-wheel drive for so long now, and the way that they do it just makes things so easy when you're driving in weather like this. I like it. I love it even, and I hate the winter. I hate the snow, but this, I have no issues with whatsoever. It just goes, look, no wheel spin at all. Traction control is not saying anything. It's not telling me, oh, you're losing traction here, buddy. No, perfect. And it's, you know, it's about as bad as it was on the driveway. We've got a few inches of snow here on the road, not just on the grass. Like, we have deep snow, and in normal mode, it's doing a great job. Now I'm driving in essentially crap right here. They've plowed like half of the road, so the other half, which we're driving in right now, is the residue of the plowing. It's going, man. It's going. We're still in normal mode. Imagine if I was going slower, if I was really legitimately stuck, you could certainly get out of problems with this. Now, reverse too. We don't talk about reverse gears very often when we're doing these episodes, but sometimes you find that getting in reverse, you get stuck more. There's no problem there. Again, we were in slightly deeper snow than you would normally expect to have. We're going to cut through, just kind of angle the wheels a little different to still cut through a lot of this crap that's on the road here. No problem at all. And if we do a brake, I'm not going to do an emergency brake, but if I were to stop, yeah, see, ABS didn't kick in too much. I was in complete control. And look, again, we're slowly starting. No wheel spin at all, nothing. We're good. We're still in normal mode. We haven't put it into the deep snow mode. So even without having to go into the dual X mode computer here, the car just plows through this stuff. And this is what you would expect for a snowstorm. You know, we're not driving in 10 foot of snow here, obviously, right? But this is what you might expect. Here's a great example. It's Tuesday that we're filming this. It's during the day. It's 12:17 according to our computer here. So this is, you know, midday. If you've been at work for 3-4 hours now, this might be the snow that has accumulated since the snow plows have come through. Especially if you live in Ontario, I felt when I was living there that the snow plows wouldn't really go out, especially onto the residential streets, until the snow stopped. So you might be dealing with this kind of crap on the road. And I gotta say that this is really good. I'm not gonna take it on the highway. I prefer to keep it in town here. The highways are probably not gonna be that great, but they're also gonna be driving about this same speed here. You're gonna be doing, you know, 50 or 60 in this type of weather. But man, the control of this is great. And I really do hope that it snows a little bit more. I don't think we're gonna do a second driving segment like we did with the Mini Cooper convertible, just because this is all snow, and I think you guys get the point now. I know it's probably a longer driving segment than you might be used to, and it might not have been as invigorating, it might not be as exciting, just because we only have 2 cameras here and they're both inside the car. But you know, this car is doing exceptionally well. If you really do live in a climate like ours here in Quebec, you want to buy something like this for that confidence. And again, Subaru definitely has the right slogan when it comes to their brand. Confidence is definitely what you're getting with this, but also in general too. I mean, you want a car that is safe, and we talked about the safety elements of this car a little earlier. Oh, as we just go through a huge amount of snow there, no problems whatsoever. You get it all. I'm really impressed. I'm more impressed with this than I was with the Impreza, just because, you know, we are kind of doing more snow oriented stuff with it. And it just does everything I want it to do. We're not doing anything silly. We're not doing anything stupid. We're driving it in rough conditions, crappy weather, going through snow mounds that are really, you have no business going through. And normally you would get stuck, but man, like, and you say, why are you going through these snow mounds, Niall? Well, if you're parking on the side of the road, right, you live or work somewhere that you have to park on the street, you're going to be dealing with this. You're going to be driving through the snow mounds because you're going to get stuck, right? The snow plows are going to come through and they are going to plow you in. So you're not going to take it at 200 kilometers an hour, but that's pretty deep snow. I'd say it's about a foot and a half that we're going through there. It's good. It's good to go. I'm really impressed with it. For a winter warrior, it's definitely got some points for me. Talk about having the right car at the right time. It makes all the difference when it comes to these reviews, and something that's hard for us to schedule or forecast. But if I had this Forester a week or 2 earlier, I'd have probably had a considerably different opinion about it. But luckily for everyone, we had some extreme snowfall during our week with the 2019 Subaru Forester Sport. And it's why its symmetrical all-wheel drive system is our top like, giving us ultimate winter control. We also like the exterior design on the Sport model, improving on the previous generation while bringing some excellent safety tech like LED lights into the mix. Believe it or not, Subaru's CVT was also a plus for us. It really didn't feel like driving a CVT at all, whether we were getting onto the highways or plowing through snow mounds. Most people aren't fans of these continuously variable transmissions, but I'd be willing to bet that most people wouldn't be able to tell if they drove this without knowing it beforehand. We also liked Subaru's approach to the auto stop start, not only having an excellent delay when coming to a stop, it would also calculate how many milliliters of fuel you've saved by using it. And finally, the overall visibility of the Forester is easily the best in the segment, with ultra-thin A-pillars and a large rear glass allowing for 90s-like visibility with forward-thinking safety top of mind. Overall, there wasn't much for us to dislike during our time with this vehicle. We found the infotainment system to be a little touchy, and configuring the 3 different displays got a little out of hand at times. The half-LED interior lighting was also a miss for us, giving the front occupants LED lights, but the rear seats old-school bulbs instead. And finally, the overall fuel economy wasn't great, even with the rough weather in mind. We used the Forester on the highways almost exclusively outside of our winter snow driving segment. It averaged 9.3 liters per 100 kilometers during our week, or 25 US mpg, but did get down to 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers, or 31 US mpg on our 100 kilometer test loop. The lasting impression this Forester gave me was complete confidence in rough conditions, and a build quality you can't find from most other cars. On the road, this crossover felt like a tank, and it's our opinion that the interior and mechanical aspects of this car should hold up well over time. If you want a seriously good winter warrior that feels like it can survive almost anything you can throw at it, the 2019 Forester Sport might just be for you.